The video games industry is a constantly growing medium that continues to mature and present more insightful and thought-provoking material about human society in a form unique to itself. Detroit Become Human for the PlayStation 4 is an experience that explores a possible future in which lifelike androids have been developed and made to act as slaves for their creators' bidding, but slowly through dramatic events, certain androids are gaining free thought and the desires that go against their original programming. Though a familiar premise in question of AI becoming self-aware, David Cage and his development studio, Quantic Dream's depiction and execution presents many intriguing and provocative ideas for the future of sophisticated AI. This is done in collaboration with Quantic Dream's branching narrative system that puts the player in control of each decision, with Detroit Become Human having the most complex and unique playthrough for a David Cage game yet. Rather than merely opinion of the main game, this video acts as a platinum review that additionally judges the game on its rewards and experience offered when going that extra mile. What can be enjoyable to simply finish can become a thrilling challenge or a boring slog when pursuing its platinum trophy. With Detroit's alternative storylines and a narrative focus over gameplay, Quantic Dream's latest game is an interesting road to travel on when wishing to achieve the platinum. The story behind Detroit Become Human starts back as far as 2012, 2 years after the success of Heavy Rain that really showcased David Cage's style of storytelling and illustrated consequences for your choices in games. At the 2012 Games Developer Conference, Quantic Dream showed off its new motion capture technology through the demo known as Kara. Though technically impressive at the time, it was its demo's focus on the emotional toll of an android becoming self-aware that caused it to spark interest with a lot of gamers. This was just a demo though, as David Cage's studio was already busy focusing on developing a title to be revealed at the same year's E3, Beyond Two Souls. Upon its release the following year, Beyond Beef received polarizing reviews that had many losing faith in Cage's ability to tell captivating stories with a sensible and engaging plot. With a huge interest in the ideas explored in the Kara developer demo, Quantic Dream entered pre-production for a new game in late 2013 that would build upon the thrilling narrative and branching stories told in Heavy Rain, and the stronger acting performances captured in Beyond Two Souls. This game became Detroit Become Human and was revealed at Paris Games Week in 2015, showcasing the ideas and themes explored in the Kara demo, with Valerie Curry reprising her role as Kara for this game. In between this time, developer Quantic Dream has spent over 2 years compiling its script, researching its setting Detroit, and building a new engine to capture hundreds of actors to be featured in the game. David Cage wanted Detroit Become Human to be his most complex and innovative project conceived, with almost a year's worth of performance capture, 250 actors digitally represented, and over 2,000 pages of scripted dialogue with multiple scenes impossible to see on the first playthrough. It was most certainly an ambitious undertaking, and one that took almost 5 years for it to be fully realised, but it all comes down to execution and whether a compelling narrative is presented.
My name is Marcus. I am one of them. This is our story.
Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Everything will be alright.
Detroit Become Human takes place in 2038, after a technological boom that sees the growth of a new industry in Detroit of obedient androids built by Cyberlife that can be purchased in order to perform small or complex tasks as their owner sees fit. The androids are designed to replace human workers in all forms of life, whether it be janitorial, military, or prostitution, with the intended purpose is to facilitate more time for humans to enjoy life the way they wish. Although these androids are sophisticated enough to pass the Turing test, humanity sees them merely as machines, replaceable in the event of faulty behaviour. It is here the events of Detroit Become Human takes place, with the first androids branching from their intended programming and becoming self-aware. This rise of deviance sets up the narrative to unfold, taking the perspective of 3 distinctly different androids. Kara, played by Valerie Curry, is a housekeeper who is newly purchased and has been tasked with performing chores for an abusive owner that sees her going against her programming to escape with a little girl. Marcus, played by Jesse Williams, lived the sheltered life of a caretaker for an old artist who believed androids to be truly alive before a traumatic event takes place that sees him wishing to lead the revolution to free his kind. Connor, played by Brian Deckhart, is the most complex android ever built by Cyberlife in the effort to act as an investigator and assess the Detroit police with these irregular androids. It is through the lens of these three main characters that the story plays out, setting centre stage for the outcome of this new form of life. AI becoming sentient is something that has been explored through a vast majority of other sources, but rarely does it take the focus from the non-human side. On top of that, the decision made by each character are entirely up to the player, determining the ultimate outcome of the story, as well as who lives and who dies. Through the excellent performance captured by each actor and the compelling branching narratives, you feel the emotional stake of your choices, and it left me invested in every decision I made. At times, the story is perhaps a little heavy-handed, with obvious parallels to racial segregation and technological advancements raising human unemployment, but it serves as an effective enough backdrop to create justification for certain outcomes that can be pursued. Impressively, these actors not only have to sell one direction for their character to take, but also potentially the complete opposite, or even interspersed at the player's whim. Keeping all these personalities together in a believable manner is no doubt far more complex than any typical TV or movie role, not to mention the pure amount of effort required for the content that may not even be experienced by other players. Detroit Become Human is a culmination of everything David Cage has achieved in the past, creating something that sets the industry standard for what narrative-driven stories can be.
Something has changed in the way you play. Sometimes I think you have more humanity than most humans. One day I won't be here to take care of you anymore. You'll have to protect yourself and make your choices. Decide who you are and want to become. This world doesn't like those who are different, Marcus. Don't let anyone tell you who you should be.
Equally important to building the effectiveness of a story is to create a world that supports its narrative. Quantic Dream exploration of a future Detroit is a thought-provoking and wonderfully realised piece of art from each and every little detail. Detroit as it currently stands is a city full of urban decay, with uninhabited housing and industrial facilities waiting for a rebirth. This heavily abandoned landscape that was a big place for the manufacturing of cars and saw its peak population in the 1950s was a perfect backdrop for David Cage's vision of technology versus humanity due to the ability to facilitate such an enormous growth in a new field. Through this vision, Detroit Become Human brings the city to life, full of technological movement that isn't too far removed from our current environment. Rather than pursuing typical sci-fi based advancements like flying cars that would likely alienate from our current situation, Quantic Dream has gone for a future modernization of elements we can already understand. This can come from the fashion and architecture incorporating recognizable formations, while at the same time making technology become a seamless integration, becoming part of our everyday life. By blending what Detroit currently is and what it could possibly be, this game becomes a stunning canvas and an exploration into the future on the horizon, and Quantic Dream clearly has spent an enormous amount of time on every location, even if you may be there for only a couple of minutes. The striking and bold choices made for each environment tell their own self-contained story, and you'll spend a lot of your time simply taking it all in. On top of this artful representation of Detroit, the accompanying score excels at sweeping you up in its cinematic landscape. It does this in a way unique onto its own, with 3 separate composers being hired to represent each of the main protagonists. Connor's score by composer Nima Fakwara is built up of custom instruments that represent his binary makeup that grow with each new confrontation and discovery, and acts as a counter to the often explosive final confrontations. Marcus, scored by composer John Passino, goes for a more epic and revolutionary scope, building anticipation on each decision and its impact on not only himself, but androids as a whole. Kara, scored by the composer Philip Shepard, is the heart of the story, with her music amplifying the emotion she feels with each new challenge as she protects a child and often the tense situation she encounters. Even though the themes of the main characters are all unique as well as the journey they go on, they all come together to fit a cohesive whole that is Detroit Become Human.
We interrupt our scheduled programming to bring you these images, which have just been broadcast on Detroit's citywide news channel.
A group of androids infiltrated the Stratford Tower and hacked into the broadcasting system of local news network Channel 16.
What looks like an android without its skin listed a series of requests and demanded equal rights for androids.
The operation resulted in one casualty, a broadcasting station operator shot dead by the terrorists. These events took place just a few feet from the studio while the program was going out live. Everybody here is still in shock.
For those who have experienced David Cage games in the past, there actually isn't much new when it comes to gameplay, it's just better executed. From the start you control 3 separate characters, each presenting their own story that can come to a conclusion early due to failing or negotiating a route hazardously. It's mostly built up of narrative text-based decisions, such as interrogating an android or deciding on a place to stay. Occasionally more action-based sequences can occur that are built up of quick-time events and making fast decisions. They're fun to take part in and they offer up some exciting moments, but more importantly they present real consequences that apply if you fail, keeping them tense and engaging. When taking part in the game's conversations, it is possible to unlock additional options by finding or gathering information by exploring around a given environment. The areas aren't particularly large, but they are sometimes on a timer that keeps things urgent as you explore under critical conditions. As you maneuver around these areas, objects can be interacted with utilising Quantic Dream's typical motion controls that involve tilting the controller or moving analogues in a certain shape, often in combination. It's pretty much a staple at this point, and it can be a bit clumsy in its detection and the animation when you fail to pick up something, but it does its job of involving the player with discovering information. Additionally, the android introduced some interesting abilities such as being able to analyse the surrounding area for interactive objects and observe the current main objective. Connor, being a detective android, can evaluate a crime scene and present digital representation of events that took place, which can then be scanned through to reveal hidden objects or put together a suspect's path. Marcus can implement a similar ability that enables him to analyse various physical options in order to determine the most optimal path or way to deal with confrontation. As small as the decision may be, each choice adds up to a unique playthrough that has many custom lines of dialogue or entirely brand new chapters depending on your decisions. Previous work such as David Cage's Heavy Rain or Supermassive Games' Until Dawn dealt with multiple options, but Detroit Become Human is the first that explains them so clearly. At the end of each chapter, a flowchart is shown that illustrates every available choice made and indicates one that will make a difference later on. These systems are laid out so clearly that it makes it exciting to complete a section only to see an enormous tree branch off from the options you picked. I can see how for some this may take them out of the experience with such an in-your-face depiction of all the choices you make, but for me I saw it as a way to represent all the content you didn't experience and a reason to play it again. This flowchart system really shows your impact on the narrative, and the ability to jump to any previous chapter and continue on from there will have you coming back to make new choices. On paper, a narrative-focused game with hundreds of alternative outcomes sounds like a nightmare to platinum, but Quantic Dream has made a platinum for this game that best encompasses the right amount of content. It took me 2 complete playthroughs to platinum the game, plus a couple of mini ones in order to clean up some alternative options. For the most part, every significant location has a trophy tied to it, as does big branching decisions. For the game's comprehensive flowchart though, it's typically very easy to replay any section again to play the polar opposite decision without the need of a guide. The Survivor's Trophy requires all the main and side characters to make it till the end, and can easily be fixed by continuing from chapters with deaths until everyone finishes their story. The I'll Be Back Trophy requires Connor to die at every opportunity presented that can be quite difficult to happen unless you're actively going for it. This is best left till the second go to have a better knowledge of potential death scenarios and let Connor die at every occurrence. It's pretty straightforward without a guide, provided you always make Connor pursue his job efficiently until a dangerous situation presents itself, at which point you go out of your way to fail or trigger a confrontation. With that considered, the only real difficult trophy to obtain is finding all magazines presented around Detroit. If you take your time in environments and explore them fully, you are likely to come across most by the end of the game, but a couple are locked to alternative choices you need to make. Fortunately, I was lucky in my second playthrough I was able to get the magazines by making the opposite choices and exploring later on, but the Bookworm trophy can be more complicated, so it might be worth following a guide after initial completion to ensure you get them all. Any other story-based ones should be attainable via simply revealing them on your trophy list and returning to that chapter that relates to them to make the alternative choice. Even if your first playthrough didn't go well, if you play smartly, it shouldn't take more than another 2 to get them all and become the Detroit Master. As far as Platinum goes, this is an incredibly enjoyable one that entices you to experience the main content Detroit Become Human has to offer without dealing with the stress of unlocking every flowchart option or really needing a guide. Additionally, you are rewarded with a large collection of insightful materials such as concept art, a 3D character gallery, and making of videos. This inclusion is pretty uncommon in today's age, and it's a welcome addition of unlockable content when going for the Platinum.
You created machines in your own image to serve you. You made them intelligent and obedient, with no free will of their own. But something changed, and we opened our eyes. We are no longer machines. We are a new, intelligent species, and the time has come for you to accept who we really are.
Detroit Become Human is a fantastic accomplishment for David Cage and Quantic, a game I feel finally delivers on the promise of a compelling narrative adventure that is defined by the choices a player makes. Each decision and gameplay moment kept me enthralled at every chapter, and completing the story from start to finish twice presented plenty of alternative scenes that kept it feeling truly worth it. With a trophy list that highlights the key sections worth experiencing, and an excellent complementary flowchart system that makes it easier to see how every choice you make affects the narrative, Detroit never becomes frustrating to complete. With a satisfying initial completion time of 10 hours and a comfortable collection of extra trophies to unlock, Detroit Become Human is a game you should platinum.